Yeah, because I don't see the button anymore for it. So yeah, I think so.
Hello, everyone. Can we please get settled in? We're going to start our session 9. You go to the next slide, please. So session 9 is our action through alliances, how community coalitions drive marine debris prevention and removal. And our first presenter is Empress Holliday, presenting on their project Cultivating, a Trinational Marine Debris Leadership Coalition to find solutions to complex cross-border land-based marine debris. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Empress. I'm a Coastal Training Program Associated Research Assistant at the Tijuana River NER. So today I'll be talking about our cross-border coalition project between the Reserve and California Sea Grant. Next slide, please. So the watershed is quite large. About 75% of it is actually located in Mexico. There are several sub-watersheds, and you can see highlighted in the red area on the left there where eventually all that water coalesces into the main river channel and crosses into the US, which is at the Tijuana River Valley and the Reserve. The watershed does encompass portions of the unceded lands of the Kumeyaay Nation, hence a trinational watershed. And obviously the United States and Mexico, we've long been connected, right, through various histories, various events, trade and commerce and development, but also by our physical geography. And in this case, we're talking mainly about water. Next slide, please. So this is where 120 miles of river ends up. So this is a portion of the reserve. That's the mouth of the Tijuana River. Just south of it, where that brown patch of land is, you start to get towards the Tijuana River Valley. And then in the mountains just behind it is the city of Tijuana. So you can see just how close the reserve boundary is. This is actually the most southwestern point in the continental United States. Fun fact. But we do deal with a lot of ecological management challenges. Excessive sedimentation is one, increasingly tropicalization, water quality, but also flooding and of course marine debris. And at our reserve, marine debris actually does end up exacerbating other challenges that we deal with like flooding and water quality. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of what this challenge looks like. I think this is a fairly dramatic photo, and it's one of my favorite ones to showcase. This is a sediment basin that we have in the portion of the Tijuana River Valley. We have 2 of them, each are about a football field long. At the end, you'll see the tough booms and nets that are designed to float and capture a lot of that excessive sediment and debris. This is not a permanent solution, right? This is a interception point. It's meant to capture that debris before it moves into the Pacific Ocean and other parts of the reserve, but it's not perfect. And it's just one part of our 3-pronged approach to address this problem. The other part of it is going to the source. And that's largely where our coastal training program comes in, especially through the work of our binational liaison, Ana Aguirre. Much of our work in Mexico is going and working with organizations and agencies there, bolstering capacity, sitting in on meetings with them, and working with them to address this challenge and on water quality and green infrastructure, increasingly so. Next step. So we realize that addressing marine debris requires much more than simply just utilizing models and transferring knowledge. It requires deepening relationships, but also elements of adaptive leadership on both sides of the border. And so one way that we try to really capture what that might look like is bringing people together, providing a space and opportunity for them to talk to each other, to have several opportunities to see what this problem looks like firsthand. Last year, we put on our very first MDLA with support of the NOAA Marine Debris Program. And we had a cohort of about 40 participants from the United States and Mexico over the course of 8 weeks come and hang out with us. And we really decided to ground this MDLA in dimensions of adaptive leadership, being a lot more reflexive, but also focusing heavily on deepening relationships Stamina in this part of the region and on this topic of marine debris and water quality was something that we also tried to address, and that kind of came to fruition on its own in the form of a beautiful social network that came out of this amongst the participants. And so we thought, well, this was a wonderful project, but the project ended. It was part of something that we had funded by NOAA Marine Debris. This was a one-off program, and we realized, next slide. These are some of the things we talked about. So over the course of 8 weeks, go back one. Over the course of 8 weeks, we talked about various challenges of waste management, transboundary governance, and cooperation. We did receive training by the National Conflict and Resolution Center on multicultural leadership and conflict resolution, but we also had several site visits in the United States and Mexico and different parts of the watershed, where we saw various scenarios that really helped us analyze what the relationship between flooding and marine debris looked like. And I think those site visits were probably the most impactful. There are participants that were part of this cohort that have been doing this their entire careers and had never gone to some of the sites that we got to take them to. So I think that was a really beautiful moment, but it was also incredibly humbling and striking. Next slide. So we realized that because this was a one-off program, there were some things we had the abilities to do and didn't. And one thing that we kind of heard back from the participants was that this was great, and we did 2 months of all this working together and all of this, and then the program ended and we all went home. And then that was it. But this grant has allowed us to think bigger, to move from just a one-off program to sustaining a more robust and comprehensive coalition. And one of the things that we heard back most was the need to work towards and complete something. So next slide. The structure that we have come up with for the next few years addresses a lot of these gaps in thinking about how our participants and cohorts are working together in between cohorts, but also in between sessions and in between academies. So we'll be engaging with our alumni to inform how future academies are run, what are some of the outcomes that could be there, but also how are we still engaging with the alumni, right? A lot of these folks are people that we work with in this project, but also in various other projects. We all know each other, we all talk together. So how are we continuously engaging with them? So we're looking at advanced training opportunities and advisory role opportunities as well. Next slide, please. And we're anticipating that some of the outcomes of this are really going to be having a better coalition of participants and marine debris leaders in the region that are more connected, that have a lot more resiliency to addressing these topics, again, getting at the stamina to continue to do this work, but also to be more well connected in the form of working with our Indigenous partners, and then also having a better understanding of physically how marine debris moves through the watershed. It's incredibly complicated. And so we're really looking forward to having several site visits. We're going to be changing up the model as well. And so we're really looking forward to that. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Time for audience questions. If you're online, you can put questions in the chat and we will get to them.
I'm sorry I didn't put my contact info. But you can find me.
Well, I have a question. So what are you guys, sorry for the feedback on the mic. What are you guys most excited about going forward with the new grant?
I think we're most excited, well, personally, I can't speak for the rest of the team. It's simply the team building aspect of it, I think is really great. We communicate with a lot of the participants via WhatsApp, which is really popular in Mexico, not so popular in the US. And what we saw come out of this was that participants in Mexico utilizing their WhatsApp group, this was held over a year ago, they still use that group. They still use it to talk to each other. They still use it to plan events and cleanups and things like that. So we're really looking at bolstering that connection, but amongst the whole cohort. So getting some input from participants on how to be able to do that better is something I'm personally looking forward to. Yeah.
A really interesting project and a shocking amount of waste coming down. I noticed on one of your slides that one of your goals is increased engagement of tribal communities, and I was wondering if you maybe it's too early, but any strategies that you're either planning to work on or any successes that you could share with the group for more successfully engaging tribal communities?
Engaging early and often is my best suggestion. So as of right now, it's still very early, and we have started planning for that. So that largely includes reaching out to the contacts that we do already have, and presenting at various committees. So the Kumi-I have various committees, the Land Conservancy, Land Repatriation, things like that, going and presenting at those committees, which extends the reach of your project. That's something we're looking forward to doing, but also offering time individually for tribes to be able to come and speak with us or ask any kind of questions, and also just to simply gauge their interest and see what needs that they have first and foremost, and then how that can be incorporated potentially in the academy, especially with how we're changing up the model a little bit, but also thinking about what barriers they might have to participating and things like that. So, but again, engaging early, often assessing their needs before your own, and then figuring out where to meet in the middle.
We have one more question.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. And then just kind of a side question to previous one about engagement.
Yeah.
Maddie. I'm just curious if you are from that area, and if or how long you've been in that area as far as like your connection, or kind of getting into either if you're from that area, having that background, or if you're new to it, just starting that connection like she was alluding to. Wow.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in San Diego. I lived in Imperial Beach, about 2 miles from the reserve, and I actually never went there until I studied it in grad school. And so, yes, this is something that's very familiar to me. It's very personal to me as well, and that I think comes to play. People know who you are, and that kind of comes to light a little bit. But also, the reserve has extremely low turnover. And we're very fortunate to have a lot of institutional knowledge. Our research coordinator has been at the reserve, I think, 25 years. My personal supervisor, Kristen Goodrich, our coastal training program coordinator, has been there 15 years. Anna, our binational liaison, has been here 16 years. So there's a lot of people who work here who have seen various changes and attempts at doing something like this, what works, what doesn't work. But I can also say that if you ask any of them, hey, what's this problem? Or how do we address this? Their answers are also going to be something like, I'm not sure. And that's because people are very complicated. And there's a lot of dynamic changes that are happening here all the time. So there's never going to be a perfect one-size-fits-all solution. And I think that also comes to play, and our partners realize that and understand that we're simply just trying to fit and find something that works in a way that brings people together to share those ideas. So I think that was a very long-winded answer, but thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions. So our next talk will be the Philadelphia Marine Debris Action Coalition by Andrew Kleiner and Zach Nemec.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Nemec. I am the Delaware River Outreach Specialist with Pennsylvania Sea Grant, and I am co-presenting with my co-investigator, Andrew Kleiner from the Academy of Natural Sciences of Drexel University, and we are just getting this kicked off. So he's going to give an overview more about this and tell you kind of what we're planning on doing.
Hi, everybody. I am Andrew Kleiner from the Academy of Natural Sciences. Go to the next slide. So what's important here is that it's our program is twofold. One is community outreach and education, and one is research. Those are the two main areas. And on the community outreach and education side, We have dedicated funds to stipends for each community group we engage with, and we'll get into those coming up. May I go to the next slide? Overall, the objective is to create a new coalition with representatives from the 6 watersheds, which you'll see in a moment, in the city. We want to create an education program about marine debris while we research microplastics in the terrestrial ecosystems in the area. Next slide, please. So this is a map. Raise your hand if you're familiar with the city of Philadelphia. Good, I figured. I was wondering. So if you take a look on the map here, the Delaware River is the blue. I know it's hard to read from where you are. So the Delaware River is the blue line there, and these are the watersheds in the city. What I tried to do when we put this application together was get a community-based organization representative from each one of the watershed areas to become part of the coalition. So we have representation from the Tookenny-Tackany Frankfurt Partnership, which is the middle watershed there, Pennypack Ecological Trust up into the northeast. City of Philadelphia Parks and Rec is a cheat code because they have community centers and facilities throughout the city. So I have them represented twice. Friends of Pekessing all the way in the northeast, and Cobb's Creek Environmental in the west. We have friends of Wissahickon who are not on the coalition but are going to be a part of the grant eventually. I've spoken to them about it. And the Schuylkill River, again, I'm using the city for that. We have their Schuylkill River specialist as part of this as well. Next slide, please. So we want to ensure that the efforts of the coalition assist historically disadvantaged communities in the area. And this map here is, it's an EJ map that the Academy created that highlights more socioeconomic drivers, incorporates more issues to create a really representative map of what environmental justice looks like in the city. So as you can see, the census tracts that are the most disadvantaged according to this metric correlate pretty sufficiently with the areas that we were going to be doing marine debris education and engagement with throughout the city. Next slide, please. Okay. There's the watershed on the left, disadvantaged map on the right. You can see we've matched up pretty much 1-to-1, and it was designed that way. We wanted to make sure that we're speaking to the communities that are seeing historic issues. And I will say that at the Academy of Natural Sciences, this is one of our core goals through our Just Solutions initiative. I'm the director of community science, so our entire model of engagement is rooted on community-based participatory research and participatory action research, so that when we're engaged with the communities in and around the city, we're making sure that we are meeting them where they're at. We're co-designing everything we do. We're working with them throughout the process, and when we get to the end, we co-develop the distribution pieces related to the research that was completed so that they can use it in their communities, and it's not just binders on a shelf. We want to set this up so that we're not leaving people with dusty binders, but with thriving partnerships. And what we'll do here is, in addition to us going out and doing like education sessions on marine debris and what's going on in the city, this coalition will end up becoming a peer-to-peer network for these CBOs and other community organizations to work with each other on the issues related to marine debris, on the issues related to microplastics and marine health in the city after this program is completed. Next slide, please. So overall, the way we're going to do this, now we're literally just starting. So I'm going to tell you how we're going to do it. And then next year, when we come to the next one, I'll show you how we did it. And then you can tell me how good my presentation was. And if I actually did what I said I was going to do, and then we can talk about why I didn't or did afterwards. So it's a fun little thing to look forward to. Right? So whole community meetings to educate target communities on the environmental and ecological issues of microplastics. Now, that's a stated goal. It's important to note that anybody who does a lot of community-based work, when you go and meet with folks in the community, it's not wise to walk in and tell them what's up. It's really important to engage in a discussion. And we, luckily, a lot of the groups we're working with, we've had established relationships with through our outreach already. So none of this is, we're not starting from square one. Teach volunteers how to sample different medium for examination. I know that's a riveting sentence, but I got a warning. I got 2 minutes. I got to run. Can you go to the next slide? I want to get through to the end. Zach's my partner, Noah's our partner. We're gonna work together through the entire process. So it's not just the communities, but it's the regulatory agencies, it's the experts, everybody at the same table working to get education and results. Next slide, please. We can skip this one. All right, so again, we're going to co-develop the research. We know we want to examine what terrestrial microplastics look like. We know that the Delaware Water Coalition, those folks, WBRC, have done the work with these communities already. They know it's in the water. We're going to look at it in the terrestrial ecosystem. So we're going to sample lanternflies and soil and bark, and we're going to see what we can turn up and see where the sources in the ecosystems next to the water, in these watersheds, where the contamination is coming from, and then talk about how to ameliorate it and deal with it. Next slide, please. 1 minute. We're going to develop a dynamic program of education and real-world experience for residents. Again, I'll say this 1,000 times, and I talk about it all the time. We want to democratize science. I'm in the 3rd floor of the Academy in Center City, Philadelphia, doing cool stuff and thinking about cool stuff, but it doesn't matter unless we're out on the street with folks, doing stuff that matters to people and making a difference. Again, no binders on shelves. Next slide, please. Ooh. All right.
Take questions now. If you have an online question and we cannot get to you in time during the session, we will connect you with the presenters afterwards. Do we have any questions in the audience? Okay, well, I have a question for you guys. So what do you think is the most exciting part about starting this project?
I'll go first and we'll throw it over to you. I think when I reached out to get the letters of support from the community groups who are going to do this, there's a lot of interest in the community about this. Marine debris isn't something foreign to folks in Philly. You know, Zach was talking this morning when we were having our networking session about how people don't think of Philly as a coastal city, but it is tidal. And a lot of the residents and a lot of the folks in Philly that are engaged in this work are aware of that. So they were ready to get going. Honestly, I'm excited to get out there. I'm excited to do some really cool chemistry with people and work on education. So we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, in Philly, there's a lot of great groups doing a lot of great work, and this is going to be good at getting everyone to the table talking and kind of how do we work together to address this issue.
All sounds really cool. We have one question in the audience.
Thanks for your talk. I feel like I might have misunderstood something. You mentioned looking for terrestrial sources and using lanternflies and bark, which is cool, but I was wondering how you're going to track that, what your plan is or methods for tracking it back to the actual sources. Thanks.
I think I should have just said we're going to see if it's in those things. I'm not necessarily where it came from. When I say sources, I mean if all of the detritus from the terrestrial ecosystem is going into the water and creating water, is it coming from the flies? Is it coming from the soil? Is it coming from the bark? Where in the terrestrial ecosystem is the most microplastic contamination, and how much of that is getting into the water? That's what we're looking at.
I had a similar question because I think the lanternfly aspect is really cool. Do lanternflies eat bark? Are you expecting to see similar results in the bark and the lanternflies?
Bark was just one of 4, just to see what. It's not so much where we're not concerned with the microplastics in the lanternflies. We assume that they're going to be there. We want to know how much of the microplastics in the lanternflies might potentially get into the water. So we'll find. I mean, that's why we're going to test plants as well. And we chose to do, if you're going to do a living test subject, invasive species makes the most sense because we got to get rid of them anyway. Because it would be harder to justify like dissolving a bunch of ladybugs in potassium hydroxide. You know what I mean?
Hi, I was wondering if you offer any financial support to your coalition members or the community-based organizations you work with for their time?
Each one is going to get a stipend of $22,500. And that's one of the things we do with every grant program at the Academy. And we were excited about working with Sea Grant and Noah on this because we want the overhead covered. We want the food covered. Every single time we do an event, we make sure there's food there. It's a real cheat code in Philly. If you offer food, people show up. And I'm very grateful for that. So we start these relationships. We want to make sure, again, that you treat community groups with respect, you acknowledge all the amazing amount of data and information that they have, and you work together on it. And it's really important to make sure that that involves compensation.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions.
Thank you, everybody.
So our next project is Plastic Free Orlando, Building a Community of Ocean Champions by Maggie Winchester-Weiler.
All right, hello. I'm Maggie Winchester-Weiler. I am the Florida Conservation Program Manager for Ocean Conservancy, and I'm really excited to share this project that we're just getting started in Orlando, Florida, in collaboration with Florida Sea Grant, that we are calling Plastic Free Cities, which is a project about empowering youth to work with businesses and their community to eliminate plastic. Next slide, please. So we're working in Orlando, Florida, which is in the center of the state. It's not a region that's really often associated with marine debris, but when you're in Florida, even if you're 2 hours away from the beach, it doesn't really matter, because anywhere you are in Florida, you're not further than 60 miles from the water. And so because Orlando is an inland area, it's not often, residents aren't usually connecting marine debris with their actions, and they're not making that connection to the ocean. And that's why we kind of focused on this area, because it still has that impact. Next slide, please. And in addition, Orlando, Florida is the 5th largest producer of waste in the state. On average, Americans produce about 5 pounds of trash per person per day, but people in Orlando or in Orange County are producing closer to 16 pounds of trash per person per day. So they're producing a lot of waste, and of course that has to go somewhere. Next slide, please. And the options for waste management in Florida are not great. I'm sure this is similar in other parts of the country as well. We don't have a lot of great options, which means we really focus on waste prevention to begin with. Next slide, please. And so that's where this program, Plastic Free Cities, comes in. We do live in Florida, where there is a state preemption that prevents individual municipalities from banning things like single-use plastics. And so we really have to get creative in our approaches of how we're going to prevent plastic from making its way to consumers in the first place. And so this is where our program, Plastic Free Cities, comes in. We are working in Orlando. This is a program that we've piloted in another area. So I'm going to kind of talk about the framework. But really, it's all about empowering youth, giving them the tools to make a change in their community by working with businesses and their community members. Next slide, please. So this is the framework of the program. So we start with training sessions with high school students. In the past, we've worked with middle school as well, but we aim to work with high school students. They go through trainings focused on plastic pollution, community advocacy, and sustainable business. Once we've given them those tools, we bring them out to the businesses around their school, and they offer basically free consulting to help the businesses save money and reduce plastic. And we really frame it in that order. I don't have enough time to talk about how exactly what those steps are, but please ask me about it at the end. So those students go to the local businesses, they help them make those changes, but they also engage with the community. Because really the point of this program is we want to be working with the businesses, but in order for those businesses to succeed, the community needs to support it as well. And so the students will host cleanups, other community events, including art activations, sustainable markets, really just to gather the community and create, a community that's going to support and value plastic-free businesses. Next slide, please. So, like I said, we did a pilot of this program in Miami-Dade County as part of a NOAA Marine Debris Grant in collaboration with local partners, including Debris Free Oceans, who you're going to hear from here shortly on another project. But this program was incredibly impactful. We ran it for 2 years. We had over 250 students participate in the program. And they canvassed over 90 businesses and worked really closely with over 30 to actually help implement changes to reduce plastic in their purchasing. In addition, our students talked to media, they engaged with elected officials. You can see some photos here of our students giving presentations, speaking on the radio, and then in this photo over here, the students went canvassing with businesses, but an elected official, one of their city council members, came with them to see the experience. And after that experience, she actually implemented a ban on single-use plastic products on city property. So a loophole to the preemption. But it was inspired by their work, which was really amazing and so cool for the students to see their direct impact on their city. In addition, they hosted lots of cleanups and other community events, engaging over 2,000 different community members in the project. Next slide, please. And through this program, we've estimated that, and we aren't done yet, we're still wrapping up this grant at the moment, but we've estimated that businesses reduced or prevented 1.2 million plastic items from being used based on the swaps that they made. And this program was really well received. So having the students work with the businesses is really that foot in the door to make the difference. But also the community responded so well to having the students be the leaders. And so we saw elected officials, providing certificates of appreciation to the students and really just celebrating the work that they were doing. Next slide, please. So this project, which we're starting, this year and moving into next year, is really focused on Orlando. We're going to be working with 4 different schools with a local partner, Ideas for Us, and we're aiming to reach out to around 100 businesses and hopefully work with many to make changes as well. Some of the resources that we'll be giving out to them include, we've got an example of a resource sheet here, but also we provide things like signage so that businesses can implement programs like providing single-use disposables only upon request, and they can implement that on the spot when our students visit during canvassing. We will also be hosting community events in collaboration with Keep Orlando Beautiful, and we're really excited to get started. Next slide, please. So the last thing that I wanted to mention is this curriculum that we developed through our pilot program it's a framework, right? We are applying it to Orlando, but we're really excited that this curriculum is going to be freely available through the NOAA Marine Debris Curriculum website, but also on Ocean Conservancy's website. The idea is we want to not only, pick it up and move it to different places, but we want people around the country to be able to apply this as well, especially in states that have preemptions that need to come up with creative solutions like Florida. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and thank you.
Yeah, this is awesome work. Really cool to see the students so empowered and working with electeds. I'm taken aback though by the number for Orlando, the waste that's produced. This might be obvious, but does that include Disney?
Yeah, so that is for Orange County, which includes Disney.
Okay, I'm wondering if you get to work with Disney at all, because I'm assuming they are a huge producer of waste or take up a lot of that percentage.
So interesting kind of fun fact is Disney is not technically within the city of Orlando. It used to be. It's not, they rezoned, so it is not anymore. I am hoping we have the opportunity to do some engagement because, a lot of people come to Orlando for Disney, and especially, when it comes to like recycling and other policies, a lot of times people come to Orlando and aren't aware of like what is recyclable, and so that leads to contamination. So there's a lot of opportunities to engage with the tourism industry, and I hope we get the opportunity to.
Thank you, Maggie. Great presentation. It's exciting to see this pilot being expanded to Orlando. I'm wondering how the students at the schools are selected to participate.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that we've done it in the past, we've collaborated usually with some sort of an app, or usually a club within the school. So some schools we've worked with their green clubs, some we've worked with their service clubs, which have been really like, it's a little bit less preaching to the choir. So I really enjoy working with like a service club or something that's not necessarily an environmental focused club. But also one school that we worked with in Miami, I don't think it was a club of any sort. I think we connected with a teacher, we told her about the program, and she advertised it across some of her classes, and then we just met after school, and it was just anybody who wanted to participate joined. So yeah, we didn't really have a selection process, and we've had large groups of students, and you saw some of the photos of them canvassing. It can get to be a lot, in which case, you know, when we're going to businesses, if we don't want 20 students entering one business, we'll like kind of split up, but we don't cap it.
Hi. Once again, I think it's a really amazing program, and I'm really excited to see the amount of impact that you're generating. I'm just very curious, with the students, you're saying that they're offering essentially consulting for businesses to reduce their plastic consumption and production. What specific strategies are you doing to ensure that the students actually create such a high impact?
Yes, thank you. That was the question I was hoping for. So we take an approach where we start with a survey. The students go in the first time they visit. We do a couple of visits to kind of start building a relationship with the business, because as I've talked to many of you about this, like it is all about the relationship. So the first day we'll go in and we'll just do a survey and kind of assess what they're using for plastic and look for best opportunities. When we actually do the consulting, we'll have the students recommend, ideally we'll look for businesses that are using single-use plastics for dine-in, because if they switch to reusables, 100% of the time they will save money. And through this grant opportunity, we actually have funds to help them get started purchasing some of those reusables or you know, other infrastructure like a water refill station to remove some of that burden to entry. So we look for those types of opportunities. We'll show them what other products exist if they are against reusables or they don't have the infrastructure. We'll show them other products that are backyard compostable, but we try to stay away from those just because they are so expensive and we don't have a commercial composting facility in Florida. So we look for, you know, those reuse options first, and then we'll kind of explore other programs. And there's lots of local programs for reuse as well. So we try to make those resources hyper local.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions. Next, we have Megan Juran presenting Washington CoastSavers Clean Coast Quest.
It's kind of intimidating from up here. Sorry, I'm just gonna set my home time. So thank you so much to Sea Grant for having me here. Oh, there we go. So I am with Washington CoastSavers. So next slide, please. So I'm just going to go over today who we are at Washington CoastSavers and what we have been doing with our current funding, our quest for a clean coast with Washington Sea Grant. Next slide, please. Oh, excuse me, I'm going to go over all of our details. So for those of you not familiar, this is Washington State here. And Washington CoastSavers, we participate, coordinate cleanups along the Pacific coast and the Strait of Juan de Fuca. So I just want to note quickly that on our coastline, the central and south coast is, Pacific coast is more of a broad, flat, sandy coastline. Up along the Olympic Peninsula, it's more of inaccessible, rocky, challenging. It's a remote shipwreck coast, so there's a lot of challenges there, and a lot of public and tribal land, but it is really challenging to get to. So next slide, please. So Washington CoastSavers is a program of the Washington Clean Coast Alliance, and we were formed in 2007 to coordinate marine debris cleanup efforts that agencies, organizations, and individuals have been conducting independently along the Washington coast as far back as 1971. Next slide, please. So I am fortunate that I work with a lot of really amazing folks. The Grassroots Garbage Gang, it's the only gang I've ever been a member of. Washington Surfrider, we partner heavily with them. Washington State Parks as well. Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, Lions Club International, and Discover Your Northwest. They make up our steering committee. Next slide, please. And then we are lucky to partner with 3 of the 4 coastal treaty tribes, as well as the Port Townsend Marine Science Center, the U.S. Coast Guard Chief Petty Officers Association, the Washington Alpine Club, and the Mountaineers to do that participate in our cleanups. Next slide, please. So we are under the fiscal sponsorship of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and I want to thank Aaron J. Zach for doing such an excellent job handling me. I very much appreciate it, and also want to thank my Sea Grant agent, Michelle Lepori-Bui, as well as the NOAA Marine Debris Program, Andrew Mason and Stacey McMahon, who do a lot to support us out on the Washington coast. Next slide, please. And then I am the sole employee of Washington CoastSavers, and I have been the coordinator since early 2022. Next slide, please. So with our current program, our current quest, if you will, we have 4 different components of it. Coordinating annual cleanup efforts with our regional partners that I mentioned earlier, working with the Quinault Indian Nation Queets community on an annual remote cleanup on their beaches. I do education outreach with and support classroom support with Nia Bay High School, which is within the Makah Nation, and I have undertaken this very large mapping project of the marine debris along the Olympic National Park Wilderness coastline. Next slide, please. So for our annual cleanup events, we do 3 annual cleanup events. We have the Washington Coast Cleanup, which was really a grassroots, started as a grassroots cleanup, mostly with folks who were really frustrated with the Park Service and their lack of action in cleaning the remote beaches of Olympic National Park. We had several really inspirational folks going rogue on that situation. And so we worked with the Park Service, who was a founding member of Washington CoastSavers, to form this, the spring Washington Coast Cleanup. So that's on the Pacific Coast and the Strait of Juan de Fuca. That's in April. We do a 4th, 5th of July cleanup on the Central and South Coast within Olympic National Park. Fireworks aren't allowed. I do support the tribal nations in their cleanups by providing them bags and things like that. But they kind of have their own thing going for that. And then we do participate in the International Coastal Cleanup. We join communities from around the world in cleaning our beaches every year in the fall. And you can see some photos of some of our awesome partners on the right there. So next, please. So this year for our Washington Coast Cleanup, we got over 16,000 pounds of marine debris. So that again covers the Pacific Coast and the Strait of Juan de Fuca. And I do want to note, it was sort of an interesting situation I got in with Olympic National Park, where they are no longer coordinating the annual cleanups with us. So these numbers are really impressive. They're on par with our normal cleanup numbers, but they don't include Olympic National Park, which is a huge, you'll see more later, a huge area of the coastline. And so, I guess I need to go really fast. So next, please, is the July cleanup. It was terrible. I've talked to some of you about it, but that 130,000 pounds does not include the several dumpster fires, the debris that's out there, all that good stuff. Next, please. And then the fall cleanup. Next, please. So I just wanted to honor the Pacific Northwest Four-Wheel Drive Association. They've been doing the cleanup since 1971, and they're really amazing. They pulled it out this fall and got us these big numbers. Next, please. So we had almost 160,000 pounds of marine and fireworks debris that we cleaned up at our 3 annual cleanups this year. Next, please. So the Quinault Indian Nation, their beaches are private, the tribal members only. So I was thankful they came and asked me if I would be interested in supporting them in cleaning up some of their remote beaches. So we did have our first cleanup this fall. Next, please. So here's some of the folks, some of the tribal members. We actually did compensate them for their time on that. Next, please. And so we were able to get over 1,300 pounds of marine debris there, and looking forward to doing more in the future. Next, please. So I have been working with Neah High School, so continuing the support of the marine debris program and providing equipment for their very underserved science classroom, and have been thankful for the connection with them and being able to provide the students all of these supplies. Next, please. So things like this, like the smart TV was purchased with the No Marine Debris program, and we've been able to add things to it like a microscope we can hook up to it, and so the students can see on that big screen. Next, please. So a big portion of the project is doing the mapping within Olympic National Park. It is a large and remote rural coastline. Next, please. There's a lot of challenges there, which you can ask me about. Next, please. Lots and lots and lots of stuff. Over here, just note on the right here, we have a very large cache, one of several very large caches, accumulation. A lot of backpackers put that into the piles. Next, please, I'm just going to blast through these. Unfortunately, I have a lot of data to go through with this mapping project. It's very overwhelming. Next, please. So you can just go, the next couple are just some of the pictures of the amazing amount of marine debris that I encountered on this mapping. And then these are our futures, is just annual cleanups next year. They're the same every year, so that's pretty easy. And then next, please, we are gonna work with the Queets community and the Quinault Indian Nation to do another cleanup with them. And then continuing outreach, I will likely switch to a local tribal school. We are very fortunate to have provided Neah Bay a lot of resources and feel like it would be best to spread that throughout the community, and the tribal school is underserved as well. And then with the mapping and just continuing that, I am working with the Park Service on a removal effort, and I just wanted to, well, I'm not even looking at my notes anywhere. I wanted to just acknowledge and thank the Marine Debris Foundation, who has provided us some funding to work towards the removal of that Scotts Bluff grant. And then next, these are just all the awesome folks that I work with. I just want to be really thankful. Many hands make light work, and we're all in together in this, so I'm very thankful for all these partnerships. And then, yeah, a good quote. And then, thank you so much.
We have some time for questions. Do we have any questions in the audience? Yes.
Eight minutes goes by really fast.
Hi, yeah, great presentation. I know you didn't have time to talk about the challenges, so I just wanted to pose this question so you could, because I want to hear more about that.
Which challenges?
I'm sorry, so many challenges.
I know.
It was before the mapping, so I think it had to do with coordinating the cleanups, and it was a picture with a ton of debris on the slides.
Yeah, so the biggest component, or I guess as far as marine debris removal is concerned, is the mapping project. So Olympic National Park is very remote, very rugged. Another layer of that is that the majority of the coastline is under the Wilderness Act. So there's a lot of prohibited actions that we cannot do there. So I have been working with the park Someone asked, I can't remember who asked earlier, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do with it? And I said, I would have someone do my paperwork for me. Working with the Park Service, I'm very thankful. I've worked for Olympic National Park before this, so I have relationships with folks. I think that's been, the most important thing. Like Nia Bay, the teacher there, she was an AmeriCorps with Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary. I work very closely with them. And so just having those relationships to build on and then guide me, like with Olympic National Park, the compliance woman who does that, I'm friends with. So she's like literally telling me how to do it. And I don't think they normally do that. So I'm very thankful for that and just having those relationships to build on. But I would say the challenge in that is more just, and no offense to you government folks, but working with the government is really hard because things are very slow. And so just having that, anticipation of using all my best patience, which I don't really have a lot of, to just be tenacious on moving that forward.
We have time for one more quick question. Okay, I have a question for you. What are kind of examples of the outreach do you have planned with the tribal schools?
So we were really fortunate to be able to buy them a lot of different supplies. Like I mentioned, the microscope. So we have, through our No Marine Debris Program funding, we have like the graduated sieves and things like that. So we have microplastics planned. We have been doing also some technology components, working with media, photo and media to do for them to create outreach education that we would use on our website, social media, and that kind of thing, to just bring awareness to them, greater awareness to them of what the issues are and how even, at their age and a remote location that they can still have a really positive impact on influencing people all around the world.
Sounds great. Thank you, Megan. That's all the time we have for questions. Next, we have Zangroniz and Madeline Kaufman presenting Preventing Marine Debris through the Zero Waste Miami Coalition.
All right, almost lunch. Excited to quickly talk to you guys about Zero Waste Miami. So do you want to go to the next slide? My name is Maddie Kaufman, and I am the Program and Outreach Director of Debris Free Oceans. We are a small Miami-based nonprofit that works to empower local communities to go zero waste.
I'm Ana Zangroniz. I'm the Florida Sea Grant Extension Agent based in Miami-Dade County, Florida. And Maddie and I have collaborated on several different projects, so we're excited for this one as well. Next slide, please. All right, Zero Waste Miami is a coalition that has actually been going on for a few months, being steered by Debris Free Oceans. And the idea behind this coalition is to really bring together a number of different stakeholder groups representing all different sectors, including the nonprofit, non-governmental organizations, local government, other community-based organizations, with this ultimate goal to really build and create a more circular economy in Miami-Dade. And I will make note that this is newly funded, so we're just getting officially started. And this is a marine debris grant, but also, like Kit said 2 days ago, it has roots in the waste reduction area. So next slide, please. So there were some scary statistics. Maggie took the wind out of our sails because we like this one a lot. This top line here, that Miami-Dade County has an extraordinarily high waste production, more than double the national average. So thanks, Maggie, for making that look not as exciting as it is. But in addition to that, we have a very low recycling rate in Miami-Dade County, especially because there's a high level of contamination in this system. We lost our incinerator actually last year, and so now there are conversations as to how and when and where that will be rebuilt. And we are at capacity in terms of our waste storage, and so we are already shipping our waste to other counties and even other states. And this final bullet here is reflective of the stats generated by the annual International Coastal Cleanup, and a very conservative average over the last 10 years for that one day is 20,000 pounds. But with the exception of this year and last year, we were at over 30,000 pounds for the previous 5 or 7 years. Next slide. So fortunately, all of those unfortunate events and statistics have also laid the groundwork for why this coalition is happening. And I really want to give a lot of recognition to Debris-Free Oceans, because they have been really laying the groundwork and working within the community to build this from the ground up over the course of this year, even before this funding was even a possibility. And there's already quite a bit of support from Miami-Dade County government, who is looking to incorporate reuse policies within a larger waste master plan. There are reuse and refill available options, and there have been partnerships already with local events, as well as having those options be accessible within the community. And there are composting and recycling providers within the county. And I also want to highlight that some of you have mentioned Dr. Jenna Jambek's group. They performed a circularity assessment protocol in Miami-Dade 2.5 years ago, and the Ocean Conservancy and I did some work locally within the community to try and generate ideas and support and development to reduced waste. So some of that has also led us down the path to the coalition. Next slide. This is a very high level snapshot of what the coalition membership looks like right now. It's currently more on the informal side, and Maddie will talk about how we're looking to formalize that. And the different clusters represent the makeup of the different members and the areas that they represent. So you can see that currently there are already over 100 members representing almost 90 different organizations. Next slide. And one more click. Boom. Okay, so what we're doing, this is a horizontal version of a circle, but what the coalition is looking to do is really try to connect these different users or providers who are hoping to move forward these different circular initiatives, oh, I'm over my time, with zero waste providers, and then bringing in the regulatory aspect to help answer questions and maybe facilitate regulatory challenges, tax incentives, or other legal considerations, and then closing the loop with the community, with the public and nonprofit sector, so that they're all working cohesively together.
All right, you took my minute. Next slide, please. And so some of the core activities of the coalition, we have ongoing communication channels. So we have a WhatsApp chat, a mailing list, and then we do monthly Zoom meetings where half of those meetings are dedicated to guest speakers working on circular economy solutions in Miami. We'll be doing framework building events and a strategy development workshop series that I'll talk about in a moment. And then we also have funding to do ongoing research about what other coalitions like some of you all are doing throughout the United States and other reuse technologies and solutions that we can bring to Miami to help implement our circular economy. So we'll go to the next slide. So our framework building events, I'm very excited for these. They're taking place next month, and we'll be determining really key components of a coalition. So we'll co-develop our mission and vision, our membership criteria, our decision-making structure, all things that obviously I would have loved to have done in the past, but it takes a lot of time to do. So I'm very grateful for this funding opportunity to allow us to formalize all of this. You'll go to the next slide. And then the bread and butter of this coalition is going to be this 4-part workshop series that will start next year. The first one will be for zero waste service providers. So that's reuse and refill technologies and companies, composters, recyclers, repair and refurbishing entities, and anyone that provides these solutions in our area or that want to come to Miami. And then the second workshop will be for service users, so anyone that wants to implement these solutions. So that can be schools, event producers, venues, 2 minutes. And basically in these 2 workshops, we will build out these profiles about what they're looking for, what their cost or budget is, what's the geographic scope of their services. And from these 2 workshops, we'll put together potential partnerships based on who matches up from those profiles. So go to the next slide. And then with the 3rd workshop, we're going to bring in government and regulatory agencies and present these potential partnerships and hash out what is the regulatory landscape we need to be aware of, what are the permitting considerations, are there tax incentives, grant opportunities that we can offer them, what can we do to make sure these projects succeed. And then afterwards, we'll get the coalition together to vote on these potential projects and determine our highest priority projects. In the fourth workshop, we'll bring everyone together, and for those top priority projects, we'll develop really detailed action plans so that they're shovel-ready projects. The projects themselves aren't funded, but they will be ready to be funded. So if we go to the next slide. So key deliverables after that framework building event, we'll have our Zero Waste Miami handbook that clearly defines who we are and what we do. We'll have our Zero Waste Miami strategy with action plans for our top priority projects. We're also going to publish all of those profiles for providers and users so that even if they're not a part of that final document, they can be used for additional projects, and build out a resource guide with those profiles along with funding opportunities, upcoming events in the zero waste space, employment opportunities. And if you'll go to the next slide. Very preliminary results, even from just connecting people via WhatsApp and the mailing list, we've seen really significant waste reduction projects. My favorite one being Ultra Music Festival, connecting with a local group, Recreate Miami, to divert 9 tons of wood material from landfill from that festival. We've seen really high engagement and support from government, high support levels, and yeah, we're very excited to get this framework event going, get this in motion. And so I think I'm at time. And yeah, would love to answer questions or connect with any of you guys working in this space about what's worked well for you and key learnings from building a coalition.
Thank you. We'll take questions from the audience, and if you have questions online, you can put them into the questions box and we will get to them.
Hi, thank you for a great presentation. I just saw on the last slide a bullet about a resource hub, and as someone who built a resource hub in their project, I was wondering if you could talk about the process of building it on your end and what is included there.
Yes, so before this funding, it existed as a very ugly spreadsheet on a Google sheet, and was very excited to have the resources to revamp it. Right now I'm using Notion, which I don't know if anyone in here has learned about that, which has been a great tool. And so it lives on a Notion webpage right now. And so we have a contact database with anyone that has given us permission to share their contact information publicly. We have a directory of zero waste service providers that you can filter by category. So you can filter by reuse and refill technologies, composting groups, recycling groups. We have a calendar of events in the zero waste space. So anything coming up that involves circular solutions and waste prevention. And then we have tabs for funding opportunities and employment opportunities, which I'm, again, excited to have more time to research and populate now that we have this project funded.
Do you have any more questions?
Joe, if you're volunteering to help, we'll take it.
So what are you guys most looking forward to in the upcoming project?
I can start. Obviously the workshops I'm very stoked for, but I'm just very excited to see what happens in between those workshops through these communication channels and seeing what resources and projects just pop up in the interim, because people now know of each other and know what resources are available to them. So that's already been fun, and I'm excited to keep seeing that happen.
I can add that part of what we had set out to do was to work with some of the historically underserved communities within Miami-Dade County. And there are a couple of local business owners within those communities who've expressed interest in the coalition. So we're really trying to broaden the scope of working with the people that we already know like this kind of stuff, is to try and get beyond that and expand our reach.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions, and we'll move on to our lunch break. So we will return for our next. We will return from our lunch break for our next session at 2 p.m.